Before we begin, we want to share that we will be recording tonight's meeting. We do plan to share this recording publicly in the event that a student, parent, staff, or community member would like to know what was discussed. If you do not wish to be recorded, please let us know at this time.
Great, thank you, Ed. I'll call this meeting to order tonight at 6 o'clock. Would you all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Great, we'll begin tonight with super fun evening. I really like this night. It's great to see faces whose names I have only seen in writing so far. So tonight I will invite, who's going first tonight? Which school? All right.
First.
All right, thank you. We'll go on.
Good job. Bring them up.
Yes, please, yes. I'm the only one over there.
Kevin Collins, principal at the middle school. And it's my pleasure to introduce to you Kim McDonald. Kim is a new teacher in our building. She comes to us from Bethel. This is her. Check. Is it on now? Okay, but you can get it, so I'm not going to catch that. She has two children, both boys, and the youngest is a senior in high school. And the best part of boarding so far for Kim is how kind everyone has been and feeling valued. So welcome, Kim. We're so happy to have you.
Welcome, welcome. Taking volunteers. Welcome.
Good evening, Vicki Mesa, principal at Termagant Ridge Elementary, and I'm excited to introduce 3 new additions to our PTR community. We have Sydney Stewart, who is in her first year ever teaching, 2nd grade. She did her student teaching at Derringer Elementary and Monty Lake School District, or Derringer School District, thank you. And a fun fact about Sydney is she's traveled to 28 of our 50 states. Then we have Leilani Farragon, and Lonnie actually is our new school counselor. She has 13 years of experience, 4 in Auburn School District and 9 in Guam. So Lonnie has traveled very far to be an excellent addition to our staff. Additionally, a fun fact about Lonnie is that she actually was born in Germany as part of a military family. Lastly, but definitely not least, we have Nisha Wilson, who joins our team as our MTSS para. And Nisha actually is in school right now obtaining her elementary degree at WVU. A very fun fact, and I thought was really interesting, and I can't wait to test it out, is Nisha actually really talks in movie references. So the next conversation that we will have, I challenge the movie references. So I'm really excited to have them join our team.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Oregon. But come on out here.
Good evening, Connie Halverson Tran, principal of Boarding Elementary School. Very excited to introduce Terry, who is our new SLPA, which means she works with students who have communication services on their IEP. And Terry and her husband John, who's in the audience, joined us in Washington State from Orange County, California. So they had their first experience with the rain the other day, and I was explaining to them what a rain jacket and a winter jacket is. Welcome, Terry.
Thanks. Oh, but wait, there's more.
Hello, I have 2 people joining us who are wonderful additions at Oregon High School. We'll go alphabetical. First is Kendra Bertrand. Kendra was right out of Washington State University. Kendra's been associate with Oregon School District for a while. She's been helping out with the program. I found out from a little birdie in one of her teachers in high school let us know that she started the Farm for Kids in Enumclaw and actually took that to the state competition level. So she was partnered with Mrs. Gum last year and got us our first state championship in FFA. And so she has a really high bar, and we have big expectations. We're expecting lots of trophies. So we're super excited. Kendra is already added to our program. You guys have probably already heard about a donation we've got recently, so we're super excited to add with your permission. Many cows to the, I don't want to ruin any surprises, but we brought those last time. You can only imagine what's going to happen. So, Kendra, welcome to the Oregon School District. Next up, we have Rachel Brousseau. Rachel came to us from Florida, teaching in Florida. She had, if I'm correct here, since we're adding fun facts, she came to school, I believe, you had more staff members than we have, like seniors in our school, is that correct? How many kids went to your high school?
About
4,000
4,000.
kids. So for some reason, she wanted to find a small town community. She had heard and visited with, this area, and so she really thought this would be a great place to call home. So she's teaching our students here, and we're super excited to have her here. And I need a fun fact, because Nikki started that, so I found out she's also a potter. Does that mean that Megan Potter, right?
Ceramics on the
Ceramics on the wheel, yes, so that's a fun fact about her. So welcome to.
It is tradition, as fascinating as this meeting may be. It is tradition that you are free to go unless you're wanting to stick around. Don't hurry. Have a great
That guy, the one with the chroma, is he actually part of the board of directors?
The kid on the end.
He's like a high school student.
He is.
What?
He's our student. He's our
Alright.
student representative. Maybe you can have one. Think about it.
Thank you, Mr. Rabb.
It's gonna be fun to watch.
All right. So the next item on my agenda is student board representative introduction.
Sure, it's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Jaden Soto. We start the process to look at sophomores for the junior representative. We take applications, we look at recommendations from teaching staff, and then we do interviews to find who that next best person is, and that next best person is Mr. Jaden. He is a high school athlete playing soccer. He loves to bake and cook, and I hear he makes a mean chili. It's starting to get to be fall that time of year, so we'll see if that shows up at all. He's involved in ASB, student leadership, and was looking forward, as I understand it, to joining FFA. I'm not sure if he did. Maybe he can elaborate in the student board report. But that was a look forward to potentially this year, is to join that program. We're very happy to have you on board. And if you missed it, he actually used his voice along with Michaela at our kickoff and stood fearless in front of every staff member and talked a little bit about what his inspiration is around here at the Oregon School District. So we're happy to have you aboard. Welcome, Jaden.
Welcome to the photo. Yes. Welcome, Jaden. And Michaela, welcome. It's great to see you this year as we kick off a new school year. All right. Guys, I lost my internet connection. The next item that's up is board recognition. So I will open it to the floor. If there's anything you'd like to mention.
Well, I'd like to recognize Boarding Middle School for having a fun first day, because I remember back in the day when we had our first days and we read every one of the rules out of the handbook, and it wasn't very fun. So I think that what they did was really cool, and it's nothing better than starting your first day of school liking it.
I will mention the kickoff event this year. I always, since I've been a part of the board, try to attend the kickoffs, and I will say that this year was, it was awesome. Having everybody there and having the band, and that's always fun, and everybody gets fed breakfast. But we had a wonderful guest speaker with Carol Decker, and was very inspiring, really hit it right out of the park when it comes to our work for the year. So it was a great annual kickoff, and I seen that the staff that was there really enjoyed it.
I'm gonna say, shout out to fall athletics. Looks like football team's out and doing really well right now. 3-0, looks like this weekend, Friday night's gonna be quite a little showdown coming up, which is gonna be awesome. And I know soccer's going also for the girls, and I think that's a little bit more of a struggle, but they're still out there giving it everything they got, so.
I'm going to add something to Southern, and I am so pleased at how quickly the drop-off and pickup at OES is going, and I know that firsthand because they all drive by my house. And I can honestly tell you, it's been really fast and smooth and not held up, so, yay.
Excellent. Well, I would just like to mention, Ording Middle School started their first day with orientation with students out on our brand new turf field. And so we're really excited and proud of that. It looks fantastic. Tonight on my way here, I passed by and it was, like I had a hard time figuring out what sport was happening because I think there was soccer on one end, football on another, and a track meet going on at the same time. So that turf is getting broken in right fast. So anyway, it's really exciting. It looks fantastic. The game tomorrow night is going to be great. It's going to be crazy. So anyway, great. Lots to recognize. The school year is just kicking off, so I know there's a lot more to come. We'll try to squeeze them all into our meetings in hopes that we can share that with the community as well. All right. Next up is community and staff comments, and I don't have anyone signed up to speak tonight. So we'll go ahead and move forward with that, and I'll turn it over to Superintendent Ratzenbucher.
Thank you very much. I'd like to start by playing a video. Miss Brittany has kind of a way of just saying, hey Ed, the news media is going to be here in about 15 minutes. How do you feel about an interview? And I say, sure, we'd love to have it. This one was unsolicited. A couple weeks ago, King 5 came, and they wanted to do a little bit of story. If you've been following the news, we've seen a migration out of schools closer to the I-5 corridor from students. Franklin Pierce is down 400 students. Seattle is down. And the news has been tracking those stories, particularly as it relates to school closures and budget reductions, but also trying to figure out where are they going, public, private. So King 5's been running several stories here about the last week and a half, and they chose to come down to Ording and feature a little bit of story about a case around growth. And if you remember, King 5 came during the bond, as did Como, running similar stories. So this is our third visit with news media, and I want to share that story with you so you can see what aired last night on TV.
We're in the Ording School District.
I love that. Community feel.
She moved to the area from Kirkland. It's back to school season in Pierce County. And Jenny McKinney says she's glad her kids are in the Ording School District.
I love that. Community feel.
She moved to the area from Kirkland 5 years ago. And says one of the main draws was the small town charm.
Really small, so the kids can get to know the teachers better. I also found out that the majority of the staff live in Ording or in the surrounding areas, so they're really invested. You can actually see the principal at the Safeway in town, or you can run into your kindergarten teacher getting ice cream.
But Jenny says she's starting to notice that the small town she moved to is growing faster than she's comfortable with as people from Seattle and Tacoma move in.
You can see the class sizes are getting bigger and bigger, and it's just kind of nerve-wracking.
Census data shows that Ording's population grew by nearly 75% between 2010 and 2020.
We're busting at the seams.
Now the Ording School District is trying to figure out how to grow as well.
This is the city corridor right here.
Superintendent Ed Hatzenbeeler says the trick is to follow where housing is being built, and a lot of it is going up in Ording.
Well, we're staring at a little over 5,000 homes over the next 12 years, so by 2035, and that will about double the size potentially of our district. So we think we could be anywhere by 2032 of I'll say about 4,400 kids up to a little over 5,000, maybe 5,200.
Hatzenbeeler says finding space for that many students will be difficult for a school district that's already struggling with cramped classrooms. 3 of the district's 4 schools are currently over capacity. Hatzenbeeler says earlier this year, a $150 million bond measure would have secured funding for a new school building, but voters rejected it.
And 2023 was the worst year in the last 25 years for school bonds across the state. Just 8% of those school bonds passed.
Hatzenbeeler says he understands the hesitation to support the bond as people try to make ends meet, but says in the near future the district won't have any more space for new students, and new schools are vital. Meanwhile, Jenny hopes other voters come on board.
I have the faith that Ording takes care of Ording, and I feel that it will come soon.
Lionel Donovan, King 5 News.
For all the things you can be in the news for, we'll take that all day. That's pretty good to help tell the story. There are a few other things I want to share just a little bit. You captured a few in my report for this month. Kickoff is really about creating that culture of belonging, welcome, invite people back into the space for the hard work to come. Thought I'd share some just photos of the smiles. Nothing is better than having our students meet and greet you at the door and welcome you through cheer and through drum lines. So that was a wonderful hit. Our speaker, I don't know about you, but wow, I was blown away once again. Carol does an amazing job of just telling her story but relating it to an educational context. We had several staff from our key labor partners talk about what inspires them. Our student board reps were up there. Miss Carrie hit a home run, and then we turned it over to Carol, who just closed us perfectly. And that really feeds around that professional learning. So I just thought I'd include this because we've talked about student voice for the last couple years. We've talked about agency and dignity, and many of our staff dug into those ideas while looking at data. And some of the data are summative in nature, like SBA. Some of the data is about student voice. And this we thought was a powerful reflection that you hadn't seen using student voice from the summer school work that we did. So part of what we want to do is change those learning outcomes, but also the agency ideas around the attitude, the belief that I can be successful. That's a component under the agency frame. So just listening to her feedback and what her confidence shifted like in the summer, I thought would be important to just share with you a soundbite of how that's actually impacting students. That work continued at all of our schools. When we think about the dignity and the agency work, PTR not only thought about what does that look like between each other and our students, but also through the lens of the community. We know maintaining that community connection and partnership is vital, so they were brainstorming ideas, what does this look like with us and with regard to our local community, which I thought was powerful and exactly what we would want to see. Digging into the first days, really creating that culture of welcome. There's a high school assembly. Mr. Jaden is up there front and center leading the charge, trying to get people rallied and excited. Each of our departments introduced themselves, so staff, that was their very first day with kids, and they were getting cheered for and clapped, and they felt excited. Kids were stoked. Looking at the smiles on faces, so many staff went out of their way to welcome, to connect, to take care of people, because there were some tears. Mostly from parents, actually, I think. It wasn't as bad from the kids because open house the week before really helps to set that context of trust and care, and I know somebody. And that continued with orientation activities and welcome activities to get us going. Wonderful, wonderful start. Looking at that community connection and partnership, I thought I'd share just a little bit, a glimpse of what OMS was sharing. This open house was after school started last week, and they were really digging into the ideas of agency and dignity. Kevin was looking about, here's how you as a family can help build a growth mindset. Here's how you can tackle that at home, and giving them language about how to encourage and support children in ways that inspire them to grow and continue to learn. And then they broke up to meet all their teachers shortly thereafter. The parent connection and partnership, our PTA, PTTEs have been active. That was actually kindergarten first day, where they were welcoming and providing some treats and some coffee and trying to take care of the parents as they were dropping their kiddos off. And I saw a few more tears that day as well, but I don't know if it was tears of joy or sad or milestone, but I know that they really welcomed kids right to the classroom door, and it was a good transition. Thinking about farm donation, we spent some time in the last month welcoming cows. You're going to see a donation letter of some mini cows. We got permission from the city, speaking of community-public partnership, to actually have some animals on the property. There's a zoning ordinance that prevents some farm activities within the city limits, but we're able to work in the partnership under the educational umbrella to have some pigs and some cows. So we're going to work on creating some pens for pigs and cows, and you're going to see that donation for consideration of approval. But those are 3 of the critters that you'll be approving tonight, if you so desire, when it gets to be that part of the night. Communicating of how to just get back to school and back in their team, building that parent partnership. We've been trying to get things out on social media, tips and tricks just to get us back in the routine. So things about waking up early, or how to get support about meals, and or attendance. Our attendance rate is one of the metrics you've discussed as being very much an important metric to look at. If kids aren't here, they're not going to be learning. So trying to do some reminders around attendance and matters and bus routes, trying to get all that back to school stuff out in families' hands. And we're going to continue that communication on an ongoing way, trying to build that partnership with our parents and families. And then the good news, we always look at that first week, what's our enrollment doing? Franklin Pierce had a nightmare. I was talking to their superintendent a few days ago. They are down 400 kids from budget. Now you think each student is about $10,000 in funding. That's waking up tomorrow and finding out we don't have $4 million, which is, that would be hard for any system. Thankfully, our system came in right on target. We're within just a 3 or 4 kid margin of what we budgeted. And if you remember, we were talking to our developers thinking they were going to be building a little bit faster. So we were going to project in January a little bit of a growth factor. And then we pulled back after we met with them in March. And that's why you have those conversations to know what's coming when. So we pulled back and just did what we call a flat roll-up out of January numbers. So we didn't plan for any more growth. We came in right at that metric. So from a fiscal standpoint, that is good news. That's not bad news, but it's certainly not the growth of a couple percent that we saw last year. But we're on target, so that is good news. And that concludes my report for this month.
Thank you for your wisdom to not budget a growth. I'm so glad we don't have a $4 million shortfall. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
That's just like the best news,
Yes.
to be connecting with the people who, wow, great job.
Yeah. Yeah, I have to think when those projections were being made and in trying to guess what families will decide to do with their kids, it's to be so spot on. It's
I
pretty
also want
amazing.
to tell you, thank you for adding to the open house for OES, I'm going to call it, and PTR, that there is someone from the bus garage there to answer questions for the parents. I know that the one at PTR was so swamped that they got so, what was my dog, that's all. I ended up helping because there were so many parents, because that's really important information that's hard to figure out. So that was a great idea to add that.
Thank you. We'll pass. We had Cassie was there with food service. Megan was there. Just trying to make that a full service, comprehensive support. And then again, our staff went out of their way to create that welcoming environment. Lots of positive hugs from former students coming back and seeing teachers, so that was really good. But the reason I put the enrollment numbers for each school is, as you can see, we haven't mitigated the capacity issue. PTR has now over 700 children. It was built for 460. Ording Elementary is well over capacity, as is the high school. So as you consider future bonds and facilities and what to do, I wanted you to see the numbers so you still kind of knew that context. So budgetarily, that's good, but it still doesn't solve some of the challenges that we have.
Jaden, Michaela, any questions, comments on that? Yeah, you're like, I felt that. I understand. All right. So next item is our student board representative reports.
Alright, so we kind of touched on sports a little bit. Our football team is undefeated right now. We have a game against Keenan Claw tomorrow. It's red out, so we're red. All the parents are too. We've informed every football parent now. All of the, we had a parent come up with us last game and was like, where can we get on this? And I was like, I'll send it to you. So they're all going to be red. Volleyball doing pretty good. They're winning day and did pretty well. I know a lot of them PR'd actually, so that was really cool. As for clubs and stuff, JD, do you have any music?
No. I do want to say, Ms. Almond's new Careers in Education class, we have started training, so in a few weeks, I think we're going to start going to schools around boarding and observing teachers, and then we're eventually going to start teaching, so.
Very cool.
Yep.
Thanks for it.
Yeah, Ms. Almond took on 2 new classes. She's got a business and education class, and she also has a career and education class, so. I'll get more, take back from like just your regular Englishes and get into like the real world scenario type things, which is really cool for her. As for clubs, a lot of them have started back up again. ASB running, we've got NHS going. There's setting up like I think this Saturday go to their first like pick up and up scenario community service. FBLA starts up soon, so clubs are getting back into the swing of things.
Is that part of a club or a class?
It's a class.
It's a
Sorry.
class.
Yeah.
No, that's okay. That's awesome that it's an offering for the students. That's pretty cool.
I'm glad they're doing that again. A couple of years, I had students, I had high school students in my room assisting with kids, and the kids adore it. You guys are like rock stars in a second.
Oh, yeah. I know our FFA was at the fair. I forgot to recognize them in board recognition, and I didn't quite hear how everybody did. We'll try to get an update from them. And then I had a question for you guys. Last year, the leadership team led the holiday bazaar. That was wildly successful. And I saw now Ording PTA picked it up.
There's a little problem right
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So maybe wait to see.
As far as we're concerned, Ording High School might not be doing it, mostly because it was picked up by the PTA. And they are doing it around the same time we were going to, so unfortunately, I mean, what can you do? It's kind of hard to host 2 bazaars back to back, especially since vendors are paying to occupy space. And it's at the same kind of locations in that area, so as of right now, it's still kind of up in the air, but I'm not 100% sure that Ording will be part of the high school.
Well, I have an idea for you. I'll talk to you offline. That's my jam. That's what I do in my work life. So I can let you know what some other schools have done. It could be kind of fun. Just an idea.
I'm here for ideas.
Okay. Sweet. Thank you. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Oh, I also forgot to mention that our daffodil stuff is starting back up again. So selection night is October 26th. I'll be there. So.
Oh, are you going?
Yeah.
All right.
So we'll see.
Congratulations. It's a big commitment.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
a long time involved.
Exactly. But I think it'll be good. I think it'll be something I'll be super fun and really interested in for me personally. It's kind of up my alley of things I like to do, so.
I love it. Can't wait to get it.
It's going to be fun.
All right, very good. Thank you very much. All right, our next report is the Washington School Improvement Framework Update. One more before that. I just skipped over the financial report. I don't
I was
know
gonna
why.
say, I've got financials.
I'm sorry.
It's because we don't have any questions anymore.
Right. I did not see any questions come through prior to the meeting. This report is prepared by, so we don't need to go through page by page, but I just want to ask, just to make sure, were there any questions or follow-up? Director Brandon. All right. Thank you again. Now I'm going to highlight the Washington School Improvement Framework. Director Lee.
So, board, our cabinet will be coming up and just sharing a little bit about your first goal around academic growth and talk a little bit about the current data trends that we've seen. I'm putting that in my Friday update. So on the good news front, we've seen the majority of our tested areas grow over the previous year, some significantly so. So cabinet will talk a little bit about what does the framework look like, what are the components, what does that current aggregate data look like from the previous year. And back to the 4 goals that you approved in August, share some sound bites about where do we think we're going this year to continue that growth trajectory. So Director Lee, I think we'll start the mic and then colleagues will join.
So we believe heavily in the idea that what gets measured is generally what gets done, and what you celebrate and what you confront is based on that as well. So spending time on these measures are really important, but I also don't want to lose the humanity of what these numbers represent. And I just want to preface that, that's our primary focus as a district, is really that idea of the movement beyond this. These are really important measures, but I don't want to lose the humanity in that. So I'll start talking about that. You got a good flow from there. I appreciate that. So here are all the elements of what the Washington School Improvement Framework measures. Back in the day, when Ed and I were at the high school, we actually, those awards you see in the windows as you drive by, that's kind of the predecessor to this. That was more what they call like a hurdle, a benchmark, like a minimum you have to get to. These are all based on growth. And so the measures really are over time. And so this is what in the world of research they call an autopsy, right? So it's always looking back. It's a backward-facing kind of a lagging indicator of how schools are doing. I won't go through each one of these things, but on the left-hand side you can see the Smarter Balanced Assessment is a big part of this. And then they have some data, statistical things like the median, like how does the median grow? So if I was to take the median of all of you, it'd be somewhere probably around Director Thibodeau, and that median growth is, if I was to test you over a couple of years, would that median, that middle, or at the middle score, would that move up or down, right? And so that's one of those scores that are out there. But a big part is the actual achievement, and that's why part of this report isn't just on this framework, it's also on our most current SBA data as well. And so it's a combination of those two things that give us a better picture of what those things are. Also know that these measures are weighted. So like, for example, you can't go to Ording Elementary School and really rate them on the graduation rate. It just won't work, right? I mean, you could try, but it wouldn't be very good, right? And so the same thing happens with other measures as well, like the growth measure. If you look at Ording Primary School, for example, they don't have a lot of growth because they only take the test 1 year. And so to measure growth, you need to have a starting point and an ending point. And the same thing happens at the high school. They take it 10th grade, and that's it. So those measures don't end up being significant in terms of what this is. These measures, I'll show you my school here. So this is last year's Smarter Balanced Assessment. And you're probably asking about where the grade level data is. That is disaggregated well, we'll show that to you at some point, but this is disaggregated by school. And what that means is you take all the scores in the entire school, add them up, and what percentage of the school's students were proficient. And so if you look at Ording Elementary School, the all students score there, 39% of all students were proficient, which means they got a level 3 or 4. And then so you start comparing all students to those targeted groups that are out there. These are groups that I didn't pick, we didn't pick. It's what the state actually measures. And so if you take a look at, compared to all students, how did our male students do? And that dotted line kind of shows you the relative up or down based on that. And what this reveals is we have some disparities in our data. And so what we look for are predictors. So if I have an IEP, is that a predictor that I'm probably not going to do very well on the SBA? And the answer is sometimes, right? And so that's what we look for. This is the actual framework measure. And so the way you read this is the more orange that measure is, the lower it is. Remember, it's an autopsy, so it's looking back over several years. And so the more blue it is, the higher that measure is. And it's on a scale of 1 to 10. And mathematically, there's a way to figure that out. But Ed says you got 10 minutes, so I'm not going to show you that. But you kind of see that. I would disagree with that as well. Here is PTR's data. 42% overall in math, 46% overall proficient in ELA. And you look at, there's a trend I see in most elementary schools, or the males generally, don't do as well. And if you look at other data points, it kind of washes out the same way. If you look at another predictor, special education ends up being one of those predictors of not doing quite as well. Take a look at Hispanics populations, 2 more races. These are all categories we ask students to identify when they get enrolled. And here is the Washington School Improvement Framework measures. Again, on the left-hand side, you can see how the numbers add up, and the colors are indicators of how well the kids did relative to their measures. They're 2 or 3 or 4 year measures. that are out there. Here is Ording Elementary School, or excuse me, Ording Middle School. 28% of the students are in middle school are not proficient in math. So that's a pretty low score. It's something we own. But if we start humanizing that data and start pulling it apart, there's a story behind every one of those kids. And that's what we're working with our administrative team. Male, female, about the same, pretty close to that. Hispanic, again, there's a disparity there. English language learners, special education, those are all areas that we're really focusing on. This is one reason why we added a teacher, an ELL teacher. So, you'll notice that there's areas here that there's a reference line there. Any areas that go below that reference line, I think Dr. Rabb.
That'll work.
Sure. Director Rabb actually talked about how schools are targeted, and they have a tier 1, tier 2. This is a tier 1 school because of the numbers that you take a look at in terms of English language learners. Also their Black African American number. There's 10 students in that school that have identified as Black African American, so it's pretty small. So 1 or 2 more kids can make all the difference in that. And lastly, here's Ording High School. Math numbers are on the top. 23% of 10th graders that took that test last year show proficiency. Male students did slightly better. It's the opposite trend that you would have seen in elementary school. Again, Hispanic Latino students, which is our largest student of color population, disparity there. Special education, English language learners. And a lot of blue here, which is good, right? So I met Director Rabb, I met with the high school, and we're like, what's the special sauce that you're using? Because our system shows kids coming in not proficient, but somehow the high school was able to work it out. So they end up, we have a 96% graduation rate, which is pretty impressive. So our system throughout the system ends up turning that data around, which is pretty impressive. My colleagues will present. What direction are we going in?
Yes. So we definitely want to see the data on the SBA, which is a large grain size, kind of that nationally marked test. We want to see that data look better. There's like 3 really key variables in that data. It's the teachers, it's the kids, and it's the work that they're doing. And from my perspective, based on the experience that I've had, we've got the right teachers, and we've got the right kids. Our kids are capable of producing more. So where this leans in for me is, and it's really tied to our theory of action, which we say if we consistently engage kids in rigorous learning opportunities, then. And so that's what we're really pressing into at this point, is what kinds of rigorous learning opportunities. Are they rigorous? Is it consistent? What does it look like in terms of what we're doing in comparison to what we could do to actually generate some of those different results? And so our work around developing a guaranteed viable curriculum so that we have guaranteed viable student outcomes is continuing the work that is really important for us to continue to do, and that's what we're focused on. And just a couple of highlights of things that specifically that are happening this year. We're in stage 2 of our elementary literacy program in terms of the second year of implementation of that curriculum. What we have this year that we didn't have last year is we have starting data. We know every single student where they measure on the scale of developmental growth in literacy going into the next grade level. And we're already, Dr. Lee, which we'll be able to say that here in no time at all, and his crew, his MTSS crew, they're literally right now placing those kids in immediate intervention at the grade level that they're at based on where they're starting and moving them forward. So we're making that meaning of that last year's data. We're continuing to support effective pedagogy, effective strategies, as well as the intervention process on our literacy. So we're learning more about that. We have kind of a unique situation this year, as you guys remember. Beth Crow was elementary TOSA last year, so she was on kind of this level, kind of supporting that work. Now she's actually teaching that curriculum in 2nd grade. We had an opportunity to meet this morning and talk a little bit about what she's learning. And she's getting from the lens of somebody who was directing it to see how viable is it actually with actual kids in a classroom, excuse me, for a full-time teacher. That's going to be very, very valuable information for us as we go through this second year of implementation. At K-8 math, so these measures that you're looking up at there, those are ELA and math measures. So in K-8 math, when we think through that theory of action of rigorous learning opportunities, there's no question in our mind that the kinds of tasks that we're putting in front of kids, K-8, are not necessarily preparing them for the work that this is being expected to do. So at K-5, we are looking at 2 different curricula this year, doing some field testing and some piloting. Both of these curricula are different than what's currently happening, and like the bookworms, which was a different way of teaching reading, and so there had to be some unlearning and then some relearning going on. That's also going to happen with math. One of the curricula that we are looking at takes the traditional I do, you do, we do model that a couple of the teachers on the board would remember, and flips that on its head and says you do, we do, and then the teacher closes and pulls things together. It's just an upside down of what most people have experienced. So we have teachers that are very excited about looking into this, but as we know that those kinds of changes can be really arduous. So we'll also lean in on the professional learning that needs to happen around that. At 6-8 math, they're going to pilot that curriculum that I just was representing for an entire year. We don't have a commitment in terms of adopting it, but if that's what they want to do, you'll be hearing from me in the spring regarding our recommendation for that. But what's cool about that situation is that came from the teachers. The teachers were the ones that generated the idea. We really want to try something else, and we think it's this. And I've known about this curriculum for quite some time. And my first meeting with them was, be careful what you ask for. Because, you know, you guys are right. You guys are right. But this is going to cost. And so let's dive into it together. And they're a phenomenal group of people that are really leaning into that. And then we're also looking at, I have the unique opportunity to solicit some support from Denise Thompson, who's doing her administrative internship this year. One of the things that we need as a system is we really need a K-12 vision for science. Our science scores are not bad. By the time kids get out of high school, they're actually pretty decent. But there's a lot of growth that we can have in that area, and not just science as a content area in itself, but that will also help the math and the reading and those other pieces, because there will be an integration. And so I'm going to kind of work with Denise, and she's going to kind of lead a process this year of looking at what a vision for really strong K-12 science might look like. And so in all of these kinds of things, we're just trying to tackle what that theory of action is talking about. Are we really challenging kids at the level that they're at and helping them grow to the level, the next level that they need to go? And at this point, we're really looking at the materials that we're putting in front of them very seriously and intentionally to see if we can improve that.
I have a question. So Steve, I think we all agree, or tell me if I'm wrong, that we definitely agree that we want to see our scores go up. I think that's the expectation of the board as well as the community. With the new curricula, I think we're all excited about that. I'm looking forward to hearing what comes forward for math. Are there components to those programs that would support some of the subgroups that are remarkably lower than the rest of the student body or on average?
Yeah, because what happens, so particularly with the literacy curriculum, because you identify where kids are at and you put them in daily interventions to get them up to grade level. So that's very specific. In the math, the particular math curriculum, the illustrative math curriculum that we're talking about, it changes the nature of the examination and the experience with math in a collaborative work with kids together, and they develop their understanding of the math conceptually. They try to build on conceptual understanding over procedural. What we have as a system, and this is not just our system, it's very traditional, is when you learn math about the facts and the rules and the algorithms and the procedures and stuff like that, and you memorize those things, and those things are important. Those concepts, those procedures are important. But there are certain kids that pick that up really fast, and then they become good at math. And the kids that need a conceptual base to attach those pieces to, those are the pieces that are missing. I happen to be one of those students. So I was able to successfully get through school, but what didn't stick for me is really the issue here, right? And so with this math program that they have, having kids explore the math, make meaning out of it together as a collaborative group, and then the teachers solidify that, and then identify where the gaps are and address those gaps. That's kind of the piece that the math would lean into. That answer your
So,
question?
can I ask a question? I'm looking at the middle high school special ed, and it's really, really low. So I'm wondering, I know that the new curriculum isn't actually it works with special ed kids, but it's not really made for special education. I'm wondering, I guess I have two questions. One is how much intervention are they getting at the middle and high school level? Because I thought they were actually getting full class time. So it's surprising to me if you're in a classroom for every day for that long that you have like a 1% and a 7%. But I also know that we haven't had any great curriculum for special education, and I'm wondering, are we looking at that, or are we just going to try and align the new curriculum with the special ed kids?
We literally kind of had a little bit of a conversation about that today in terms of the work that I do and the role that I do, and how does Jennifer join in on that. And we have at the middle school in the math curriculum work that we're doing, we have our resource teachers attached to that. They're getting the training, they're working through the curriculum, and they're making meaning out of that for their kids. We also have a resource teacher added to the elementary team for the same purpose. So I can't answer that question right now, but we've got people that have the same question you do that are going to be on that committee. The part that I think, and I know that this is a practice in a lot of systems, I don't know at this point whether the curriculum, how it addresses this, is oftentimes with our particular students with special needs, they come in lower, and we start them there, and we work from there, and we go forward. Well, the pattern that ultimately creates is unless they get more than a year's worth of growth, they're always behind.
Yeah.
And, right, so hopefully what we'll find in some of these are some resources to accelerate that learning so that it can start to close that gap a little bit. Do you have something else you wanted to add to that question?
I would just say that when we look at the achievement of students with disabilities, we have to look at it from a number of different perspectives. The first one being, do they even have access to the same standards and curriculum that their peers do? And I think across the system, as we look, many of the times we're saying, no, they don't, right? So they aren't having access to the same standards, therefore, how are they going to achieve on those tests? So that's the first kind of problem we're trying to collaborate and solve, is how do we get them more equitable access to gen ed environments, to high quality instruction. The second component Steve talked to was around remediation and efficiency of teaching. So they're going to have gaps, right? And how do we close gaps efficiently so that they make more progress than just a year? So it's a twofold question when we look at our tiers of intervention. How do we find more time in the day for them to actually have access as well as build skills? So.
Especially at least looking at them, would love to see them improving at least, I don't expect maybe a year's to be accomplished, but their actual scores individually, we would like to see that go up,
Right.
Individually.
And we should, like when you look at those scores and you look at let's take high school, for example, and 11% of students with disabilities are at proficiency in SVOD. Well, we probably have more than 11% of kids who have qualify for special education, but don't qualify in the area of reading.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So like that, it just speaks to kind of some disparities that shouldn't be there at all.
I had a question about, do we have any data from other school districts in Washington that have used this math curriculum? You only spoke of one of them, so I don't know what the other one is. So that we can see how, was it effective for their data with the SBA? Because, you know, sometimes things are great ideas, but then they don't quantify into the test scores that you would like to see, and that's a hard thing to juggle, so.
Yeah, that's a great question. I haven't taken that step yet, but that's a step that we will take. And also to your point, this is what we kind of learned with bookworms. They talk about an implementation dip. That's something that's been around for a long time. But what I think that we noticed last year was when something's as different as like the bookworms curriculum is and the math curriculum is, we can anticipate that there's going to be a little bit of a gap there for them to really deeply understand it and to effectively and precisely use it. So there's going to be a little bit of lag there, I think, just in terms of that it might not show up right away. Like the bookworms data that we have, we show growth for every kid in their fluency scores throughout the course of the year, but that didn't necessarily translate in achievement on the SBA. And to some degree, that's not related to each other, but to another degree, it leads us to some more questions about that. And not the least of which for me is, where are we lagging and needing support in the implementation of that with real integrity, so that we really are giving it a chance to work and we really are unlearning and relearning in the way that we do things. Human nature is, and this is human nature, it's not specific to us, is if you don't understand it or it doesn't seem to work right away, we like to go back to where we're comfortable. And so we do see some of that, and we want to keep pressing into that because you've got to give it enough chance for it to gel. And that was one of the things that Beth said this morning when I was talking with her, is she's got some second graders that are kindergarten level, and some of these kids that are literally kindergarten level. And she says, what I'm noticing is if I stay with them every single day and I keep pressing, they're starting to get it. It's starting to make sense. So that's the piece that we want to push into.
Right, I was wondering though, if we start out with some anecdotal information about, because no curriculum is perfect. No curriculum takes care of all the needs of the kids. And we make sure that we address, say, the example I always give is math expressions. It was awful at number sense, and every teacher knew that, and so that's what you supplemented right there. You know, so if we get some information ahead of time, yes, there'll be a certain amount of a lag, but we can also, you know, do some preventative things too.
What I know about the illustrative math, and I've known this for a bit, and this is why when the middle school was excited about it, I said, yeah, you guys are right, is in the tools that we have to understand the Smarter Balanced Assessment, the math portion of the Smarter Balanced Assessment, breaking all that stuff down and showing item examples and assessment examples, all those examples in Achieve the Core come from illustrative math. So they pull from this curriculum as representative of the kinds of samples that what kids are going to be expected to do.
How does the we do, you do, I do kind of curriculum work? Because, I mean, as I would kind of understand it, is that you work with your peers around it to try to figure out a problem to begin with. And then you kind of figure it out yourself, and then the teacher teaches it to solidify it, kind of, right?
Yeah, that's a simple, yeah.
How does that correlate with their experience on the SBA? Because once you're in that room, you're almost learning by yourself.
Yeah.
So if you look at a problem and you're like, man, I don't know how to figure that out, you don't have the opportunity to look to your neighbor and be like, hey, how do I do this? So I wonder how that's going to really help students think for themselves, in a sense, because I know that sometimes if I do a project with a group of people, I can figure it out with that group of people, and that's obviously going to help me later in life when I'm in a job and all that kind of stuff, which I love that we're doing that. But specifically for getting our SBA scores higher, my concern is how getting kids to work in a group is going to help them work by themselves.
Yeah. Well, specific to your question, two thoughts. One is, The nature of the we do piece is to develop conceptual understanding, which is actually the Velcro for the mathematical procedures and algorithms and stuff. So the belief is that the deeper that conceptual base is, when the kids get in those situations, they have their toolbox is more robust. The other part is at the end of the lesson, they call it the cool down piece. And as a part of this lesson, that is the individual thinking. And they're required every day to leave something that the teacher examines. The teacher can do it during that cool down time or as an exit slip. And the teacher can get evidence on where they're at, what, and where they're not, and address that.
Okay.
So they do have to demonstrate their own understanding by the end of the lesson.
And then my other thing is you talked about like comfortability and how students like obviously don't like being out of their comfort zone, which is a totally understandable thing. How do you like assess how a student's going to feel if they're like in a big group and they're required to like give input on a certain topic and
Good
work
question.
together with people? How are you going to assume that like a kid's not going to feel uncomfortable with that? Because I mean, from personal experience, when people, I mean, I'm pretty good at talking out. I know that there are some kids that are like, I don't like to share my opinion. I don't like to be involved in this. And does that hinder them from learning that topic because they don't want to be involved in that?
That's a good question.
And so that's the other part about like, sometimes you need the teacher to kind of give you that background so that you have something to build off to make your own opinion about something.
Yeah.
And so if you're not giving that student the opportunity to hear from like someone who actually knows how to do it, how are they going to build that themselves to speak and collaborate with others?
Yeah, there's two terms we use when we talk about curriculum implementation. One is fidelity of implementation and one is integrity in implementation. The fidelity really kind of means do it the way that it says to do it.
Okay.
The integrity portion is do it the way that works for these kids sitting in front of you, right? So, and it's not quite a chicken and egg thing, but the deeper you understand the curriculum, the more you'll be able to flex without taking and making it less than it is. So we do try to lean into that fidelity piece first so that they get that mastery of it, but definitely that piece you're talking about is what works and doesn't work, because even though we're trying to elevate test scores and we really want that to happen, our lens going into this through, and it's right there, you can kind of see it, that agency and dignity are the drivers, right? So those are, we don't ever want to, what Dr. Lee said, I'm just going to keep that because I like it, I love the sound of it, is we want to humanize this process as well.
Okay.
Kids are more than a test score, right?
Right, exactly.
It's a really good question.
Okay.
If I understand, and I might not, it also maybe isn't to make kids more comfortable with making mistakes, you know, like, you know how nobody wants to talk if they're wrong, but if you get comfortable with that, if we start to do it more, then it might, maybe that will be something that they're more comfortable with and will speak out because other kids are making mistakes too.
Oh yeah, and I totally get that. And will the curriculum depend on the environment of the classroom is really what it is? Because I mean, your one class might be totally vocal, totally here for that, and one class might not. So how do we adapt to that? Like, will there be a certain step that we can take to make it so that we can get kids in?
We're not allowed to graduate?
No, it's like 50 years since you coming back and you get your teaching credentials.
I know. All in favor? Take action.
And we've already got you marked out for becoming a principal after that. Who knows, superintendent.
Lakayla, you asked some really important questions, and I really appreciate, this is obviously a topic that the board is passionate about, and so Steve, Jennifer, thank you for taking our impromptu questions.
And I don't mean to be that person. You don't have no. I can totally take the I have no answers for that. I want to.
That person is who we're trying to build. The reason we have agency up there is because you're exercising your agency right now. That's why we want you to be a teacher here. That's why we want you to be a principal.
Perfect model for that.
That is agency. You are demonstrating it. You're embodying it for all of
I
us.
appreciate it. I just, in all honesty, I want kids to be able to have the best experience and learn the most. I mean, I have to leave next year and go off to college to Arizona or whatever, and I want every kid to be as prepared as I am to go and to have the great experience that I have. So if we can help build that here, that's great. I'm glad
Well,
we
you
got
just
to win.
completed your first interview, works good.
And there's a great question, because I was gonna ask follow-up for what I was asking, it would have been what you said, so, hey.
There we go.
There, so you were using a teacher mindset there, my dear.
Trying my best.
I have to think as an HR director, I didn't know I was coming to a board meeting tonight to offer a job, right?
Just hope we get that
Yeah,
right.
literally, there you go.
Yeah, we're gonna get it now, right? Well, Steve was talking about academic growth, and we also know that we want growth and opportunity around the whole child. And making sure that students, children have the opportunity to learn social and emotional skills. One of the things I was thinking as Michaela was talking is, it just seems, on my observation right now, that she possesses a lot of those social and emotional skills that really help her kind of have that whole package moving forward. And what that does when people possess the social and emotional skills, it allows them to face problems that they may have and overcome obstacles with that. And then it also allows them to form connections with others. So we were talking about how in a classroom setting, being in a group versus being by yourself. And there's a time and place for each of those, but that's really what we're talking about when we're talking about the whole child, and just opportunities there. We have a variety of ways that we've been trying to offer opportunities to children and in the Orting School District, and some of those are student-led. So we have leadership at the high school, and I'm sure you've heard of that. We have a pretty active leadership, right? And we have at the middle school ASB, so kids are engaged in that and moving that forward on a school basis. You probably recall last year we had the PTR food drive, so this engagement there, and I know under our superintendent report we had some pictures from that last year. There were Dignity First groups that were developed at both our middle school and our high school that not only, I'm so confused because we only have one doctor here, but Dr. Lee, I'll call him. He's Dr. Lee in training. He's been an integral part of that, along with other staff members and of course our students at both places. We've talked over the summer, leadership, we read a book, Street Data, and we're talking about how do we gather that data and what types of data do we need to have a full look at what we're doing and be able to move our system forward. And so one thing that we have challenged our leaders to do recently is to put together a portfolio, electronic portfolio. So over the years, if you're like me and raising my kids, I've heard lots about portfolios and to help my own children get through high school. But just thinking about what can they do to collect artifacts and evidence to be able to look at the year as it's gone by, look back, see what we've done, evaluate where we landed, and look at the opportunities as we move forward. So that's something that each of our buildings and full cabinet leadership are going to be doing this year. We've already started. There's pieces of that already together. And then you probably also know, as another example of the whole child, that we've been doing panorama surveys. We've been using those with our students more than one time per year so that we can look at how the students are doing, monitor that, and provide additional opportunities to ensure that they have growth as we create the whole child. So now Dr. Westover. All right, so I'm going to talk about our goal around community partnerships and engagement and connection. We have really focused on developing partnerships with families to develop agency and dignity through the practice of student-led conferences. It's something that we've been doing. Our community connect events, including like the Cultural Unity Fair, the Title I Engagement Nights, and our Future Farmers of America are other ways that we've engaged the community. We have partnerships with community service providers to provide mental health supports in our schools. We have our partnerships with Recovery Cafe, really looking at prevention and supporting students through that, continuing to develop those partnerships. This year we're really looking at the development of a
panorama survey for our community, our families, and asking them about engagement. That's one of the things that we're doing. And then really looking at partnering at the school and classroom level with families on that learning. Like, what does learning look like and how can they support learning at home? Did I not turn, oh, I did creepy pictures. All right. The last goal we're going to talk about tonight is around student support systems. And we touched a little bit on that as Steve was talking about academics, and we started to talk a little bit about tiered supports and how we're supporting students. We've begun the work around making sure that we have positive behavior interventions and supports in our buildings. We're also working at increasing our tiered supports for academics, right? So what we have core instruction, but then what do we do when students aren't making enough progress? What are our interventions and how do we use data to determine when an intervention is needed and then monitor that intervention? We've also begun working with our building leaders around monthly meetings focused on student and academic and behavioral data and how we improve practices through coaching teachers. So with that, are there any questions?
I would just like to thank you, and this has been a common thread for me. I'm super excited and passionate, and I think the board is, based on our questions for Steve. My, not so much worry, but we're doing so many cool new things and how students are learning and the methods we're using to teach them and helping them to make such great strides forward. How do we bring the families along with us? How do, I don't want our students to go home and sit down with mom and dad to work on something and I have been the parent going, the heck, that's not how we do it. Let me show you how we do it. I don't want that learning to be undone or contradicted by families. And so the partnerships are a really important way that we're bringing them along on this journey. And so I just want to recognize that, call it out, tell you that it's very important to me. And I hope we continue to support communities as they learn how their kids are learning differently than they have in the past.
Particularly with math, right?
Yes. 100%. Yeah.
A couple things I would add, we've changed the structure of our principal leadership team meetings where we're analyzing data on a monthly basis. So what we're really working on is the problem formation, so really trying to articulate what are the root issues of what we see in the data, not only from a celebratory lens, so where do we see growth and why, but where do we see needed improvement and what do we think will make that difference. And so we'll be continuing to work with our leaders on developing that problem formation, which is the basis of their school improvement plans. You can expect to see that in December. So as soon as we figure out we have the right problem to attack, our next step in that late October to November stage is build that theory of action. So what are the beliefs that we have as a system of what will change that and turn that around, and what are the supports necessary in communication. So we'll be working with our leaders right up and through that November process, and we'll bring those school improvement plans to you in a roundtable format in December at the board work session, where you'll have a chance, one or two of you at a time, to sit with each school and hear more about their thinking around each of these goal areas. That's different this year. We're going to ask them to write a problem or a goal around each of the 4 board goals. So you'll have a chance to hear a little bit more about their thinking. What does that conversation with students, with staff, with community partners look like and sound like that far to lead them there? And you'll get a really strong insight, I think, into what this year will look like. We gave you a little bit of a teaser tonight. And then from there, in January, February, March, and April, you'll hear more of the story as a board. You'll hear from staff, from students, from our leaders about what is it looking like and sounding like. And then what we'll do in May at the board retreat, we'll take a soundbite from each of our 4 schools and provide through their voice an update. So where do they see growth, progress? And that's some of the value of looking at the data on a monthly basis. We hope to really not have a strategy of hope and wait and throw a dart. A year from now, will it work? We want to know along the way. Is it working, and for whom and why not? So we can course correct. So that's a little bit about where we're going to go from here tonight. And I'm very excited for you to sit with our leaders in December and share more. I know it's going to be a wonderful night.
That made me think of a question. Aaron mentioned that we would be looking at some point in time at the more specific SBA data. And it would be good to know, to be able to look at that before the school improvement plans, because some of those things are gonna be more specific to certain areas than other areas, so that,
Right
in
now,
my mind, that would be important information.
we can definitely bring back the update to the school improvement framework. You saw what is most readily available now. At
Right.
some
Yeah,
point,
that's what I
that will be
said,
updated, so
yeah.
we can bring that back and show by grade level if you'd like to see that. That's already out, other than science. So just in our 2x2s, you can give me some direction about what you'd like to see. And I'll advise you when we see an update, we can figure out the right time. What's different this year, or at least the last couple of years, it seems to have taken the state a while to update this data and calculate the metrics, and part of that is COVID related. If you recall, that data you saw, that anchors all the way back to 1819. Those kids have long left the school, but the score is still there. So we'll bring the update when we have and talk about, would you rather see it publicly here at the regular board meeting or at a work session?
That makes me think, Kayla and Jaden, I know we always manage our regular board meetings, but the board work sessions are, I can't remember if those are on your calendars or not. Those are open public meetings, and if you would like to hear the school improvement plans and that kind of thing, we would love to have you participate in those. I know you've got busy school schedules. I'm gonna make a note to ask Bonnie to invite you to those, but we would really appreciate your insights and questions during the work sessions as well as the board meetings.
What do we think of the conference too?
Yeah, we'll talk about conference too. Just know we know school is busy, so we get that part. Yes, it's important. Great. Thank you. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, everybody. All right. You're forgiven on going over 10 minutes. That's our fault. And don't say a word to them. All right, next is our second reading of any policy not any policy considerations, but specifically these policy considerations. Was there any further discussion? And if not, I will entertain a motion.
Of that huge group.
I move to approve the second reading of policy considerations.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. And that was a big batch. I know there's another big batch coming our way.
Yes.
So prepare yourselves.
Another one coming, right?
Yep.
All right, so consent agenda is next, and this, we will vote on vouchers, personnel, FFA Leadership Development Camp field trip, FFA National Convention, and then the minutes for our last two board meetings. For this one, I'd like to entertain a motion for items 1, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and then we'll come back to personnel.
I move to approve items 1, 3, 4, 5, and 6.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Those items on the consent agenda pass. And now we have the personnel component of the consent agenda. And
Director Hilo would like to abstain from this one here.
thank you, Mike. So I will take a motion for the personnel agenda.
Motion to approve item number 2, personnel under the consent agenda.
Thank you.
I second it.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you, Mike. All right, our next item requires an action. There's a board memo there explaining the mini cows donation. Y'all very excited?
Mini cows.
Looking forward to meeting the mini cows.
Yeah.
I'm very excited about them too. I will say, I had a few questions and I wanted to thank Ed for getting back to me on those so quickly this week, because this is an awesome opportunity for not just, the CTE program and the A program, but the things that they'll be able to take down to the other schools and the community involvement that this will bring. It's a very exciting thing.
Very good. I will entertain a motion.
I move to accept the donation.
Been waiting to say that all night. Can I get a second?
A second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Welcome, mini cows. Yeah. I will open the floor for board comments.
As we kind of moved through tonight's meeting, there was a couple of things that just kind of struck me. One, we were talking about community engagement, and I know that we don't always have a lot of seats and chairs at our board meetings because people are eating dinner and being with their families. But Brittany has done a fantastic job of putting sound bites out there all the time on social media. It's not where I choose to go to get my news, but it is where I choose to go to get what's going on in our community. And for anybody that is a part of this district in any manner, to just put a daily looky-loo out on the Facebook or the Instagram or whatever, you'll find all kinds of things related to Orting School District, no matter what the day is. And it's a fantastic job doing that. And that being said, I saw a little bite that September is Suicide Awareness Month. That strikes really close to home for me, and suicide awareness is, we all go through tough times, and I will say at our kickoff this year, we had that inspirational presentation there by Carol Decker, and we can all do hard things, and we all need a little help sometimes, and so having that message out there was great. I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you.
I have a comment that's related with the mini cows. Because, I'm such an avid gardener, and I know you're looking at FFA possibly. When they do the plant sale, they might think about, they're going to have, you have the zoo do, you know what the zoo do is? That's just a possibility. It's just a good, that would be a good fundraiser with Cars and Pigs providing a lot of.
Very good, passion project.
Cardinals do.
She's out of control.
I'm sorry.
I think it's a great idea.
I should simply go buy some.
There you go. Awesome.
So the Orting Lions Club will be selling hamburgers at the football game. And they were kind of short-handed, so the Orting High School soccer team is going to help out and get some of the proceeds.
Great idea.
I love that.
Yeah.
Great
It's
idea.
fantastic. I like that collaboration.
And I just want to mention, I know my child's part of the marching band. They're going to do their show tomorrow for the first time at halftime. So that's going to be awesome also. So I think this is our first home football should do, right? So that's going to be awesome. So yeah, I mean,
People are out on the field practicing too.
They are
Football
practicing,
and
yes.
with everybody
Yeah.
else is watching.
and they're turning the lights off. So when the stadium's dark, they're done. So.
I have two things I want to mention. One, we had a question come up at our last meeting about conflict of interest. And the contract's up to $3,000 a month that directors can enter into with the district. And how does that work with substitutes, because we can't be subs in the classrooms. And so we got a very detailed response, and so I just want to close that loop with everyone. If you have any further questions, please forward that to Bonnie. But I think that it's prohibited for us to volunteer as subs or to be hired as an employee as a substitute teacher. And we don't meet any of the exception rules that would allow that. So I'm just closing the loop on that. I also want to express my gratitude and thanks to Melissa for representing our board and the district during AWASDA's General Assembly and reviewing all of the positions and the legislative work and advocacy they do on our behalf. So that was a very lengthy list, and I appreciate her work on that, representing our views, our ordering views in that conversation. So, good. I think that's it. Anything else? Good. All right. And with that, then I will adjourn this meeting tonight at 7:53.